Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live with Gina London, who is here to share with us some great tips all about how to be assertive without being perceived as difficult. Gina, tell
Yeah,
everybody a little bit about yourself first for people who might be watching for the first time.
sure. I have the absolute privilege of working with people all over the world, emerging talent, top level, C-level leaders, on helping them take more control and become more confident and more comfortable about the them that they bring across. So, how are they motivating their teams? How are they collaborating with colleagues? How are they being captivated to people on stages or on panel discussions when they're representing their organization externally. So, helping people take more control of their words, their voice, and their body. And some of it is brought from the origin of my career, which was when I was a White House correspondent with CNN for almost 10 years. So, on camera presence, elevating and simplifying stories to connect with audiences. And then after that, I was a strategist for campaigns all around the world in civil societies, helping them raise immunization awareness, helping them get out some other issues in Indonesia and Cambodia. And so I went from telling other people's stories to helping people tell their stories. And now in the corporate world, as I mentioned, it is a variety of things, but it always comes back to harnessing your humanness. And I think it's really important that we're all gathered here today to think, how do we take more control of the human that we are
Hmm.
in an AI dominated world? And this is going to be the distinguishing characteristic for leaders going forward. It is no exaggeration to say that the people who can human up are the ones that are going to be the most viable and the ones that can excel. You can use technology to support you, but if you can't, over a long period of time, begin to encourage, enable, and support others to leave that long lasting positive legacy, then I think you might have a short term gain, but you won't have a long term positive impact.
It's so interesting how many people don't seem to realize that human connection and being able and sometimes the emotional intelligence is a big thing at the moment. I think I was talking to a colleague of mine, and empathy seems to be something that is very important because we're not, as certain leaders are not showing us much empathy. So
Well, look, let's be honest, the winds of change or the potential to fall under this, what I would say would be a temporary wind of change around a bullying style and a
mm,
lying style and a say anything at any cost style.
mm,
Like I mentioned, sure, you can look to some examples and say, oh, well, they got where they are. And I would say, at what cost?
yeah,
I
no,
would say, at what long lasting, impactful cost? And go back to your own values. Do you shift with whatever way the wind is blowing, or do you know what your values are and do you dig in? I can certainly say there are companies that I work with right now that they are doubling down on inclusion and compassion and emotional intelligence and support for their employees, and bringing in different perspectives and bringing in neurodivergency and bringing in the many different human versions of the world humans out there in order to have better successful businesses. It's not just because you're trying to be woke or kind is a weakness. It's because there are business cases for why people who are valued are more loyal and more productive. And I will put my stake in the sand or in the cement on this one, because
mm,
it is easy to go, oh wow, it's not matter anymore. Oh, I need to be like this. I'm going to go emulate this style and be a jerk and be a bully and do the command and control style because I can, because I have a title. And it might get you that immediate project or that immediate whatever it is you're after, but it is not going to be a value building, relationship building, reputation. And you can't please everybody, but my gosh, there are better ways. And I'm going to say, you and I are in the safe, psychological, brave space of we are going to keep saying there's a better way, there's an encouraging way, there's a diminisher way, and there's a multiplier way.
Yeah, and it like sometimes the difference. What is the difference, Gina? Like, what are the key differences between being assertive and being aggressive?
Well, I think that what first of all, I think the mistake there is that assertive means combative, but with a lighter touch. You can hold your ground, or you can make your position, or you can offer a differing opinion while still being poised.
Mhm.
And so aggressive is often associated with hostility or anger or those emotions that are impulsive and reactive and not controlled. And assertive can be persuasive, influential, and also strong in the sense that you're not speaking with really soft tones. You're not shying away from a difficult conversation. You're having those opportunities, or you're taking those opportunities in a meeting and not holding back to share your opinion. So when we think about how do we do that, and it's the how that really becomes the question, because you can say, okay, I want to be a contributor, I'd rather be assertive, and what does that look like, or what does that feel like? So we break it down to words, voice, and body, and we have the strategy to be assertive, the strategy to have also a positive impression at the same time, to be taken seriously. And then we have the mechanics or the tactics of how to do that. And so that's where I like to bring those two together.
So, voice, is that where you start?
Well,
Body
yes.
language.
I think well they're integrated, and you can pick any particular one, but the voice is the first thing that people are going to associate with you. And when you open your mouth and you say, "Hi, I'm Gina London," or is it, "Hi, I'm Gina London"? I just like to say I'm Gina London. The idea of that was a word part along with the voice part as I think about that second one. When you are speaking, especially in a virtual situation where the number one sense that you are coming through on in this flat screen, little tiny postage stamp size versions of ourselves, your voice is your calling card. Your voice is, may I add something to that? I'd like to expand on what Sam just said. You don't have to say, I need to say something right now, but you do need to have some projection. You do need to have some clarity to the sound of your voice. So, projection, you can call it volume, but I don't want it to be mistaken for yelling, because that's not it. Pushing your breath to the back of the wall and not relying upon the little microphone in your laptop or across a boardroom. You're not just speaking to the person next to you, you're speaking to the room at large, especially in hybrid situations. If you're going to contribute and you're speaking just to the people around you, and there's some people coming in virtually, you've just by default, by the sound of your voice, not included them. So practice projection. Anybody
Mhm.
can project their voice, whether or not you'd say, oh, but I'm introverted. It's a mechanics. Anyone can project their voice. So don't let your thoughts about yourself impede your development.
Okay. Okay. So, I know for me, I find it very difficult to be assertive sometimes.
Would be an example of when.
Well, if I see something that I don't entirely agree with,
Hmm.
um, I want to advise not to do it, but I'm afraid to if I say it, I might come across as being pushy.
Well, situational awareness is critical. So you need to, of course, assume the what's at risk, what's the cost, what's the gain. Am I someone who's going to be getting in out of my lane and going into some other colleague's project and offering my unsolicited advice, and I consider that's assertive, or is it intrusive?
Mm,
So those types of things, you need to make some decisions, and everything doesn't need your opinion,
mm.
meaning not your Sam, but our opinion.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
be selective on these things. Let's say though that it is a meeting where there's a lot of people in attendance and someone offers up something and you have an opposing view, which I think might be harder to bring forward than if you want to add on something addition. So you're building on what they're saying, or if you're course correcting. A couple
Mm,
of things to bear in mind is how. So now we go from the projection, some of the vocal qualities, to what are the words that you would use to enter. Imagine that you're two things that are happening in alignment with the words you're going to say. Your voice is strong, the projection's happening so that you don't, if you're going to jump in with the jump rope, you're going to jump in. Don't shy away from it. You're going to jump in. So you have that voices. And then you're also going to have a face of poise. It doesn't have to look combative.
mm.
You can offset a counter opinion with a collaborative face. You can assume positive reaction from someone by doing this. So acknowledge, then contribute. So
Okay.
now here's the word structure. If you're going to acknowledge, you're going to say, I appreciate the viewpoint. I appreciate the points that were just read or just shared by Sam. And, which is different than a but. So we do acknowledge.
And okay.
And is a great connector
Okay.
because it doesn't discount what the first person said. You might not agree with it. And you can still link with and sound more collaborative. So you
Mm,
say something along the lines of, I appreciate what Bill just shared, and let me offer this alternative. And let me put these points into consideration, which is different than, no, I completely disagree with that, and here's why. So
so
what
different, but it's so
could
simple.
be the same information, but you just completely packaged it differently.
Yeah.
And so now Bill doesn't like you anymore, and the people that are in Bill's camp don't like you anymore. And because you led with your instinct, you probably led with your emotional reaction, which is no, don't like this, don't agree with this. Here's why. No, whatever. And is your face also indicating that, ah, Bill, once again,
I'm just thinking of the people watching this. His name might not be Bill. It might not even
right?
be
No,
a
this is an imaginary Bill. His name could be
imaginary Bill.
Roger. His name could be Muhammad. His name could be Giuseppe. I don't know. And it might be a woman. There could be
Yes, it might be
another
one.
human being. The name is irrelevant. But the interjection
Mm,
is where you want to keep that poise.
mm.
And so don't well and this can be difficult when things are getting heated or people are and I would say if things are getting really heated, what is your best role? Probably to observe for a little bit, probably to make some calculated decisions in real time. What's at stake? What's to gain? How much do I want to contribute this? Who are my other allies in the room? So when we think about our assertiveness, it's not just a one and done in a meeting. It's how do we already have some pre buy in? How have we prepared? What is our plan of construction around this? Certainly, almost most meetings, especially if you know there are certain topics going to be covered, you pretty much know the agendas of other people, or you can anticipate and potentially prepare to disarm challenges before you get into the meeting. So even visualizing what the flow of that meeting is going to be is going to help you prepare your words and your voice and your body language to imagine those scenarios in advance. And this is so underappreciated. And this is where your development of who you are is not just constantly reacting and reacting. It's cultivating the experience that you bring of yourself to other people. And it takes focus, it takes effort, it takes discipline. And this is something that we often overlook because we're just this little boat out in the water floating around, getting buffered and banged about by the tide and the waves and the wind and the currents. And that isn't assertive. That's just floating along aimlessly. And so then you get frustrated because you haven't been taking enough control or you haven't been curating yourself. So a lot of times that's when the emotion erupts because you haven't been consistently curating a version of you. And it's not about being fake. I always have to put that out there. People go, oh, this is so performative. This is so masking. This is not who I really am. Who are you? Who are you if not the combination of the external experiences that you are giving to other people by default or by design and to a mutually beneficial outcome? If that's your goal, which it isn't always, some people are dividing and conquering and disrupting and running by their ego and they don't care and they're steamrolling over everyone. If that is your goal, then you're in the wrong room today. If your goal is to build people and bring people to a mutually beneficial outcome, to lift others as you're moving a project or your company or a plan forward together, then there are some choices you can make to be a more impactful leader by being assertive, but also bringing others along, by doing your homework in advance, by holding your ground, but in poise and in calmness. And it takes an effort.
Yeah, and this is why you train so many people, because it's an ongoing thing for life, really, isn't it? Even outside of work,
Right.
it's for life. We've a great question. It's
I
just
love what Lauren's saying. Please read it out loud, though. I'd love to have a time to reflect while you're reading it.
yes. What is your recommendation on handling people who always come into the conversation ready to fight? I think we all know one of those. What's a good way to handle them interrupting, talking over, etc.? It can be hard to get the alternative viewpoint out when they won't listen.
Right. So I appreciate that. First of all, Laura, thanks for giving that really thought out question. And I'm going to give a couple of caveats because, of course, situationally, there could be a lot of depends
Mm,
here. So, one is if you know there's always going to be that person and you are the leader or you are the facilitator, couple of things you can do before the meeting happens. And this is where if you are the leader and this is a person who is an interact who directly reports into you, it's time for that difficult conversation. It's time for that feedback. It's time to put that person in a coaching experience of what's happening here.
mm,
Help me understand what you're trying to achieve, which is different than what are you trying to achieve, by
yeah.
the way. So these
Mm,
are pre-conversations. But when you say to someone, help me understand what you're trying to achieve, or help me understand your approach, that would give them an open opportunity to share things and not feel defensive. It's not going to work in the meeting, this particular tactic. But if you are not that person's leader or supervisor, and you know that there's that colleague who's going to come in and be the disruptor and be the antagonist all the time, here's another alternative. I would get your crew together beforehand. What are we going to do? What's our plan when poor Bill? I don't even know a Bill right now. What are we going to do when Bill disrupts this meeting and we know what he's going to say? We know his style. If there's a pre plan of the little bit of a coming together to say, Bill, we appreciate what you have to say, or Bill, we hear you, which is different than we appreciate it. We appreciate you. And we also are going to take 10 minutes to put our counterpoints apart. So you can time block him if you need to see him. If you're the facilitator of the meeting and you didn't do any of the prep beforehand, you do need to not let this person take over your meeting.
mm,
So one way to do that is even be preemptive. If you know this person is a repeat offender, we're going to talk for the next 20 minutes about this. Bill, I'm going to let you say your point first because I know you have one. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. And then we're going to take some more time to hear from other points of views and I can bring Bill back in. But I would facilitate the heck out of it.
mm.
Put him in a position of we see you already. You didn't say that you're a disruptor, but you say we know you have an opinion. So that's a disarming way. And now, if you are the person speaking and Bill interrupts, which is something that is often happening in meetings in real time that you didn't anticipate or you haven't prepared beforehand, here's what I would encourage you to do. If you're in a room, put your hand on the table. So that now we're adding a little bit of body language emphasis. Keep your face look poised, but you're putting your hand on your table. Name check the person. Sam, I want to hear the point that you're going to make after I wrap up my thoughts. I hear you, Sam. Let me finish what I'm going to say, and then I'll move the floor back over to you. You can do a little smile. Your hand's there, and you're speaking with a strong projected voice. So if you start, so you've seen it in debates when someone starts speaking on top of the other person, if the other person keeps driving at volume, they often can carry it. If they disrupt, if that person disrupts their flow and they start to take on this little sidebar battle, then it really unravels. But if they continue to focus on who their real audience is and don't let that person disrupt, that can be a great tactic. And then, of course, when all else fails, you can do the Kamala Harris, I'm speaking.
I love that question though, Laura. Definitely.
There's not one way to disarm this, but there is a poise that you can continue to bring forward.
Gosh, yeah, that's fantastic advice. I actually wrote those. I appreciate these points and, or help me understand all of those little things. We hear you, all of those things. They're all things that,
Practice lines because we don't think of them at the time. Our heart's
yeah.
starting to race, our blood pressure's going up, the cortisol's being released in all of us. So if you don't practice these lines beforehand,
Mm.
I think it's a lot harder to use in real life. That said, over time, they will become part of your toolkit. I always sort of make my toolkit over here of the different tools that you can pick out right away in a situation like that. And when you've practiced them, then you can use them to your advantage. I think Nyan's got a great point.
Yes, Nayan. Are there some cultural barriers that make it difficult to be assertive?
Okay, so yes is the answer. And then again, this takes some unpicking because I have to presume which particular cultures. Certainly with an overgeneralization alert, in a higher context culture like China or other parts of Southeast Asia, where people tend to wait. They're encouraged to be more listeners. They're not American style coming forward and putting things really more with a stronger style, I suppose, or what's the word that's not what the word I want, but they're being not combative, they're not being aggressive, but they're being quite independent and quite direct in more of a context base where they're looking for other clues. The thing that I would offer there, because I do a lot of work in those regions as well and pick another region, is driving. So not driving at speed and driving with a steamroller like I mentioned before, but if you do want to make a point, your voice can still be soft. It's not soft, but it can be warm and it can also be projected. So that requires you to have that presence of face where you say, today we're going to be going over this presentation, disarm this challenge, disarm this challenge. I hear that this might be an objection. I hear that this might be an objection. I want to let you know that we've identified the financial concerns. We've overcome the resources questions. Stay with me till we get to the end of 15 minutes. I look forward to your questions. So your setup there isn't assertive in a way you might be thinking, but it is guiding in a way that ultimately is demonstrating your authority on the subject and your presence in the room. So you can be simultaneously warm and credible. And I think that's important to understand, that your ability to hold the space, looking confident, sounding confident,
Hmm.
and then constructing those, stay with me. I'm going to speak to these other issues, keeping that flow going. If you start to hesitate, your voice drops, your face looks uncertain. In
Hmm.
any culture, that's a signal that you're losing control. So I've taught this before in other sessions, but I want to make sure and give you all the Gina London, neuroscience ratified tool that you can use in any situation. Here we go. Put your thumb in your palm and put that forward into your palm. Turn your hand around, and this will help offset some of those flickers or those nervous tendencies as you're practicing smooth, poised delivery. And to Nyan's point about the aggrandizement, when people are showboating or people are spotlighting and being overly boisterous or opinionated, in those situations you can't win all the time. I mean, you can't. And what you could do is nod your head. When you're finished, I'll complete my thought.
Mm.
And I think that we have to be aware that there are bullies, and there are some people who are so ego driven they'll never bring a team around, and you can't compete with those people. You can try to do your own stakeholder analysis and bringing them around with you if you've got a project that you are really passionate about or you've got a team that's working. But we don't, unfortunately, our communications doesn't live in a vacuum.
Mm.
It's two or more people that we're interacting with, and not everyone has the multiplier mindset. Not everyone appreciates other perspectives. And if you get someone that's sucking the oxygen out of that room and you don't have buy-in from your leader, or you don't have buy-in from other team members, I would assess at that point, how much do you need to win this battle? What count the cost before you jump in on anything? You can maintain your expression of poise and not give any away in either direction, how frustrated you are or how upset you are, and then try to go and regroup afterwards. But I don't think it's going to be to anyone's advantage if you try to arm wrestle someone in an impromptu style there on the table.
I actually am going to ask you from your own personal experience. So I just want to acknowledge Michelle Daly Hayes, who said it really is about using stepping stones to keep on message.
I agree. If I understand correctly what Michelle's alluding to there, the idea of continuing to move forward, continuing to move forward. Have some points though. Make sure that if you are being assertive, that you have prepared and structured in advance so that you're not also mistaking speaking and holding court as being assertive, and that's a good thing. So have your points and make your points, and also wrap your points and give the space and give the floor to someone else.
Hmm. Because yeah, I'm actually I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm sure a lot of people this resonates with as well, you know. But it is also, I was thinking, okay, well, I know it's a mistake what they're going to make, but I need to give the reasons. So what you mean is have those points ready, be like, and let me offer this alternative and put these points forward as to why I feel this is why I feel that way, that kind of thing.
Something else to consider is a great way to get into it, for example. So think about your entry lines if you are beginning to get into a back and forth with someone else. Those types of lines can help you claim your space and then maintain your space. So the claim your space lines are: Michelle makes a great, not a great point. Michelle makes a point, which is different than we agree with it. Michelle makes a point, and let me also offer this perspective. So I haven't even said it's counter or I disagree or what have you. Now I'm going to state what I'm going to say, and it's likely to be different. There might be some collaborative abilities around it. There might be some compromise
Mm.
outcomes that are embedded, better than to just immediately say, I've got nothing in common with what the previous speaker said. Now you all have to put all your money in with me. That's a zero
Mm.
win. So
Mm.
if we can find, is there a blend? That's another way to think about it. And keeping your voice and your face and your body language engaged is going to help you exude that feeling of assertion, as opposed to, oh, frustrated, oh, all this stuff starts to leak out, and it minimizes
Yeah.
your ability to persuade and influence.
Yeah, and it's not a good look, is it really? Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have probably had your own personal experience of where you've had to be assertive. Have you got any story you could share with us?
I can absolutely. I can share a story from my recent coaching experience of a client in the Middle East, and the CEO came on midway through the coaching, hadn't met this person before, and the first thing that the CEO of a huge organization there comes on, and it was virtual like this, and I'm exactly where I am, and he comes on, the first thing he says is, I haven't seen any change in so and so. So that's a combative line.
Mm.
That's a line I didn't expect. We didn't even do the how are yous or anything. It was his opening move.
Wow.
What happens here is assertive could be, if you go, oh, how do you be assertive? Assertive could be, oh, I need to defend myself. Oh, I need to raise my voice. In this situation, the choice that I made, and I think that it served, well, I'm still working with the organization and a client. I have new clients. So let's give you the outcome. But let me tell you what I did. First, I dug my thumb in my palm like nobody's business, because I could feel the flush coming up to me. I didn't expect this at all. And from my own perspective and from what the client's been saying, they felt more confident and they felt like they were actually doing a better job. That said, it is, of course, essential to get the input from the CEO. So, coaching hat. When we have our coaching hat on, what do? We don't rush to categorize, we ask a question. So, I dug my thumb in here, kept my face as neutral and unexpressive and not reactive as I could. So, I kept it like this. So I answered with a question. Can you explain that?
Mhm.
Can you expand upon that? Slowed, kept my projection was strong. I didn't go, oh, 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 oh. And I didn't start to rush, but I did ask a very slow, I went, can you expand on that? Or can you explain that? I can't remember exactly the words I used, but I know that I fired a question in a curious way. Not, the tone wasn't, oh, can you explain? Give me an example. You see, all
Mhm.
those different things come in to create that experience of what's going to happen with this other person. And when I said that, and I kept my face looking open and detached enough to be genuinely interested, and that's a tactic, by the way. I didn't necessarily feel that. I wanted him, like all of us, to say what a great job I've been doing and how much change and different behaviors that you've seen from this person. So, but by asking him to reflect some more, he actually, and we went through a little bit more of that. And what else? Now, then he softened his tone. He actually was able to identify some things where he thought this person was making progress. He also was able to give some examples of where more could be done. And it was a much more constructive interaction, and I didn't have to be aggressive about
Mm.
it. I did need to remain poised. I did need to remember that I do have self-worth and I am making an impact, and I have been asked to work with this person for a reason. So you have to get all that going in your brain right away and then make a choice of what to do. It takes a lot longer to describe the interaction than it actually was to have it. But the outcome was that we grew our professional relationship. He felt more trusted in me because I didn't react, I
Mm.
responded. And that's, I think, a critical component of being an authority and a lasting positive legacy focused individual. So you can be assertive and you can also be inquisitive, curious, collaborative, uplifting, and you can also certainly acknowledge if you make a mistake. That's okay. You can acknowledge that you made a mistake while still being elevated.
A lot of that is all around grace, isn't it? Having grace, really, I feel, just from listening to you. We've a lot of comments actually that have come in, and we've 128 people watching right now. Thank you so much, everybody who's tuned in, everybody who's watching on Twitter as well as LinkedIn. And Rebecca has said, important conversation, assertiveness. Yeah, all about that. So thank you so much, Shakar, for commenting. Great insight to use the hand on the table. That was a great tip, actually, Gina. And then
Well,
we have Lorena.
remember, when we think about sorry to cross over, Sam, real quickly, as to recap a little bit of where we've been, those of you who might be tuning in midway, our communications is that integration and balance among our word choice. So, what constructive tool are we using? Are we doing a question? Are we stating a point? Do we have a little builder clause like the I hear you and let me offer this?
Mhm.
Those techniques are not things that you need to be making up on the fly. You can begin to make your own vocabulary list or your phrase list and start to memorize them and work through them. I mean, in one of the coaching books that I use many times, in the back, by the way, Coaching for Performance, if you've ever come across it, it's written by a wonderful leader in the field, Sir John Whitmore. Look at all the questions. Look at all the variety of different questions to dig deeper in a coaching engagement. Guess what? You can use those questions in a lot of different situations. So you build your vocabulary, your words, your voice, and your facial expressions and your body language are the integrated way that you create an experience of you to connect with others. And most of us have not thought of it that way. And we certainly haven't made it our practice to develop the muscle memory required to be able to do this in a natural way. It's like you watch a video about basketball playing and then you go out and try to play basketball on a court with pros. It's not going to happen. The same
Yeah.
way you can't just
Mm.
just read that book. You have to take a couple of words or phrases and try to integrate it into your interactions with others, and over time it becomes more natural.
It's like the pause, the power of the pause. You know, I'm
That's
noticing
another
even
tool.
myself when I'm speaking, I am doing more of the pause, and it works it's so effective. So thank you. I learned that from you, Gina.
You're welcome. And it's another tool when you've got someone who's coming at you that you didn't expect. Pop the thumb in here, but also give yourself 3 beats.
Yeah,
I
brilliant.
hear you. You know, breathe in the if you sit in silence, that is very uncomfortable for other people. I was talking about projecting your voice, but also let me share about the power of silence
Mhm.
strategically when it's the right situation. Sorry, there
Brilliant.
was a question or a comment and I kept
Uh,
going.
Lorena, who is lovely, Lorena Stella Corporate Housing. She is very interesting. It's very uncomfortable when a person is non-confrontational by nature, and you're dealing with somebody, Bill, in using
Well,
passive aggressive and silent treatments, so they stop the progress. I hope there's nobody called Bill watching today.
and if there is, please know that I think you're fabulous. Not disruptive and not confrontational. If someone look passive aggressive is a tricky one because that's sort of the person that will say, "Oh, sure, I get it," and then go on and do something else or gives a little snide comment. That's where your coaching can come in. If you're the facilitator, Bill, share more about where that's coming from, please. See,
Mm.
I got the confrontational words, but I've got the warm delivery. So do you see how disarming that is? I stay in control. I'm positive. I'm also calling him out. And I'm
Mm.
not calling him out in an aggressive way. Bill, come on. What are you talking about? That's
Yeah.
defensive. Bill, can you explain more? Help us understand what you are alluding to.
Help us understand. I like that.
Help us understand is a great, or help me understand
Yeah.
is a great builder of a relationship issue because you genuinely do. Like what's going on? Most people aren't disrupting just for the sake of disrupting. There's something going on. There's something they want to achieve. I
Mm.
mean, there might be people that are just hand grenade throwers out there, but in a business in an organization where you're trying to serve a client or serve customers or get a project across the line, it can be worth it to explore as long as you're curating it in a way that says, I see you and I want to give you some time to explain, but we don't need the snide comments. Now, you can't say that part.
True. And we're coming close to the end of time. So, Nain, has there ever been a situation where you're anxious about people wanting to hear from you whilst asserting yourself? Or how were you able to win their enthusiasm?
Well, that and I'm not quite sure of the I don't completely understand that one depending. I have to ask Nyan. Well, you find me on LinkedIn and we'll have another conversation. I think if I understand where we're coming from is, for example, a wonderful woman that I coach down in South Africa. She's the only lead plant director in a whole region of manufacturing plants that are all led by men. Up in when I started coaching her, they're only working virtually. They all kind of already know each other. So she's the odd woman out and she's the newcomer.
Mm,
And so for her in that setting of how does she begin to engage her or get herself part of that group, my advice to her was don't wait for the meetings. Start those one-on-ones when you're starting to build your rapport with people. Start to reach out for a 5-minute virtual coffee, get to know the other people,
mm,
do some pre-buy-in. If you've got something that you want to share or a point you're trying to make or an idea that you're going to want to introduce, see if you can do some stakeholder analysis beforehand of who should I call first and get their advice on it. How
mm.
can I ask for their input on it? And remember, when we're doing that kind of pre-buy-in work, it is important to prioritize who should be called first, because if you make a mistake and you call Nyan and Lorena gets upset because she should have been called first and learns that you did this, that can backfire. And I know that sounds overly prescriptive, but it is important to at least give it awareness. Don't forget, former registered lobbyist. So I know the idea of making sure your elected officials are happy with what order you go back and try to get that pre-buy-in or that advice. So to create enthusiasm, get to know those people, know them one-on-one, try to get rapport with them and things that you have in common. And then if you can, get them to help advocate for you when you are projecting an idea. Hopefully it's for the benefit of the whole organization.
Yeah, not an easy position to be in. Yeah, thank you. And then Laura says thank you. And then Neil, who's brilliant, he turns up every time we do a LinkedIn Live.
Hi,
Thank you so
Neil.
much, Neil. Agree, Gina. Proper poise and practicing your body language in these situations is important, and counting the cost of the battle should be considered in advance. That's a great
Wonderful
way.
way to sum it up. Thanks a lot, Neil. Absolutely. I mean, folks, never let them see you sweat. I know that's hard to say in the world of authenticity and vulnerability. And sometimes, of course, in a psychologically safe place, it's okay.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, you yourself can project that confidence and that poise, and you're actually muscle memorying it for the next time. And watch what it does for the way trust is built, people feel more safe and comforted around you because you can keep it together. It's a developable skill like anything else. I'm not saying that you have to do it all the time, but do start to exercise and stretch and grow the versions of you by thinking proactively in advance, practicing that poise, practicing some of those lines, and taking this stuff seriously, because it is really essential now more than ever to know how to dial up and dial down and bring the intentional human that you have within you out.
Well, thank you so much, Gina. Gina London, you can connect with Gina on LinkedIn, obviously, and ginalondon.com. She has some wonderful downloads there if you want to go and check them out. Lots of resources. So do, and also she's on YouTube and Twitter, so connect there as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Lorena, Neil, Laura, Nayan, everybody, Shashi. Thank you. He says thank you. Great conversation. Thank you
Oh,
very much.
Shashi, I didn't see you there. A great friend of mine in Kuwait. Hey.
Hey, Shashi, thank you so much. So, Gina, we look forward to your next LinkedIn newsletter. We will have this replay if anyone wants to check it out. If you're not subscribed to Gina's newsletter, please subscribe and you will get updates on the next LinkedIn audio, which will be coming in April. Thank you very much, Gina.
Thank you, Sam. And a real special thanks to Sam. She does an incredible job of moderating and keeping this all together and running smoothly.
Thank you.
Hats off to you.